This is the iGo Titan, and it resembles the eVelo Aries. They both use this unique sort of mid-drive system here. However, the iGo is made in Canada, or marketed through Canada. These are probably all made in Asia. And eVelos are marketed in America. And what I found is that eVelo offers a lot better support, especially if you live in America. I'm actually looking at this. It's sort of a customer model that is having some issues, was brought into a local shop, and they're really struggling to get support. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into the specs here. So this thing looks really cool. You can see it's a full suspension design here. We got the rock shocks up front, right, which is pretty cool. It's even got lockout up here, which is nice. So if you're riding on flats, you can reduce some of the bob. The rear suspension does not have that. It's very, very basic, and in fact, it's kind of like a spring. It's bouncy. I'm not a huge fan of that, but it does look cool. You know, you look at this bike online, and you're like, man, it's got a good price. It seems like a motocross bike or something. It's awesome looking. Unfortunately, it doesn't ride as well as it looks. Well, let me just jump back here. So we've got Shimano Alivio drivetrain, 8-speed grip shifter right here, Tektro brakes that cut off power to the motor if you use them, which of course is kind of standard for electric bikes. The motor here is actually a 250 watt mid-drive system, and the battery pack is powered by Samsung, 36 volt 10 amp hour, which is fairly standard. Now the way this is mounted, it actually comes with a little key, and you kind of turn that forward to secure it in place, and then you can take the key out, which is kind of nice. But the battery pack itself, just this big plastic thing, right? So you can charge it on or off the bike, which is kind of nice. But when you actually ride with it, let's put it back down here, it kind of, you know, it bounces around, and it has this like rattly sound when you're going over bumps, which I'm not a huge fan of. And the only locking point is right there. It's just a rod that slides through. You know, not a huge fan of that. Now it does have front and rear lights, but they're pretty basic, and you'll see this fender, as you're going over bumps, it bounces all over the place. So just not a super high quality bike. And that brings us to the drivetrain itself. So what we're looking at here is a really basic Pedelec sensor. Okay, so what that does is, this is sort of a sensor right here, and it listens for these little magnets going by, and as those pass, it either says, you know, turn on the motor or stop the motor, right? Now that's not super fast, not very responsive at all. And what that means is the motor's going to be, you know, turning away like this, pulling on that chain, pulling on this cassette back here at times when you don't necessarily want it to do so. So let's say you're changing gears, you're coming up to a hill, you try to change gears, that chain is going to be pulling really hard and grinding and mashing, and it's not a great experience, and in my opinion, it makes those sprockets vulnerable as you're shifting gears. So not a huge fan. It also changes your cadence, okay? So as you're pedaling along in one gear, the motor's going to try to help you, but it struggles unless it's at just the right gear. So even though this thing says, oh yeah, it can hit 20 miles per hour top speed, you really have to be in a higher gear in order to do that. And that means that as you're pedaling, you're going to have to pedal slower, because you're compromising how you ride the bike in order to meet the motor's needs. Not a big fan of that. There's just better systems out there like Bosch or Panasonic. They have much better mid-drives. This is definitely a cheaper model here. Now it does have front and rear disc brakes, which is nice and important because this is not a very lightweight bike. I would say, oh, they're kind of moving some of the weight forward with this mid-drive, but the battery's still high and rear, which is bad. So I'm going to hop on the bike and just pedal and kind of try to look down so you can see the frame flexing a little bit and try to get a better idea of how this thing rides. The back shock that we heard there. So we'll slide out. Whoa, forgot I don't have brakes. Going into a curve. There's the full suspension, but a little bit of bouncing. Look down. Here's the wiggle I was talking about. You can see when I do that, the whole frame just kind of wiggles back there. Yeah. 26-inch wheels on this thing. Pretty standard. Try to bunny hop it. Bunny bounce it. Yep. Sweet. I think you get the picture. Not the most rigid frame. Relatively heavy. Try to lift it up in the middle here. Oh, and you could hear the battery pack when I did that. So this is the sound it makes when you're going faster. Hear that? Chick, chick, chick. Yep. Well, I apologize. Some of the footage from this shoot was lost, so I don't have all the ride test. And again, I know this was sort of a downer. I just wanted to call out the different pros and cons and help people avoid having a negative experience with different electric bikes. I know people have gotten the iGos and had a decent time, but it's no fun to have your bike in the shop and have issues and struggle with support. So for the full written review on this bike and other electric bike reviews, check out ElectricBikeReview.com, and I'll see you there.